The parking lot was silent, save for the hum of distant traffic. A man stood by his vehicle, his movements stiff and deliberate. He waited, scanning the rows of empty spaces until a woman appeared in the distance, walking toward her own car. He adjusted his posture, shifted his weight, and then let his keys slip from his fingers. They hit the asphalt with a sharp, metallic ring. He did not reach for them immediately. Instead, he looked up, catching her eye, and offered a soft, practiced smile. It was the face of a man who needed a moment of kindness. The woman paused. She saw the struggle, the dropped keys, the vulnerable stance, and she began to move toward him. She did not know that her decision to assist him was the final choice she would ever make. She did not know that his helpful exterior was a carefully constructed cage. He watched her approach, his gaze steady, his intent locked behind that calm, familiar expression. The trap was set, and the distance between them closed with every step she took. He was the man you trusted, and he was the man who would end your life. The mask did not appear overnight. It was forged in the silence of a childhood defined by a singular, foundational lie. He grew up believing his mother was his sister, an early lesson in how reality could be reshaped to suit a narrative. This deception became his primary tool. As he grew, he moved through the world not as a shadow, but as a pillar of the community. He entered law school, his mind sharp and his ambition clear. He served as a political volunteer, shaking hands and winning confidence in crowded rooms. He answered calls on a suicide hotline, offering comfort to the desperate while concealing his own hollow core. People saw a future attorney, a reliable peer, a man who belonged in their lives. He inhabited these roles with absolute precision. He learned that if you look like you belong, nobody asks who you really are. He walked through lecture halls and offices, shielded by the assumption of goodness. To his peers, he was the person you turned to for help. To his victims, he was the person who turned your trust into a death sentence. He was the man you trusted because he knew exactly how to look like the man you needed. By 1974, the facade of the law student gave way to the reality of the predator. He began to hunt with a cold, terrifying efficiency. He sought out women who shared a specific, haunting resemblance to a past partner, treating the world like a game board where he moved the pieces at will. He adopted a new method to bridge the gap between stranger and target. He started using crutches, a simple, effective signal of helplessness that bypassed every defensive instinct. People stopped to help the man who seemed broken. He waited in parking lots and quiet streets, leaning on the support, his eyes tracking movement with predatory patience. Once a target stopped, he guided them toward his vehicle. The Volkswagen Beetle became his primary tool, a confined space where the lure turned into an inescapable trap. He moved from city to city, leaving no pattern for the authorities to follow. He understood that the safest place for a monster is behind a mask of misfortune. Every time he stepped out of that car, he was already deciding who would not be going home. He operated in the open, hidden by the very sympathy he weaponized against the unsuspecting. The hunt had moved from the shadows of his mind into the light of the streets. In Utah, he abandoned the crutches for a more dangerous deception. He posed as a police officer, using the authority of the badge to command compliance. When he approached Carol DeRanche, he spoke with the confidence of a man who owned the road. He moved quickly, securing her wrists in handcuffs before she could process the shift in the air. He drove toward a dark destination, the engine noise masking her heavy breathing. He believed the trap was complete. He was wrong. As the car surged forward, DeRanche stopped waiting for a miracle and forced one. She lunged, throwing her weight against the door handle. The latch clicked. She pushed. She did not hesitate as she tumbled from the moving vehicle onto the asphalt. The impact was violent, but she scrambled to her feet and ran into the night, refusing to become another statistic. The car slowed, then accelerated into the darkness, but the damage to his invincibility was absolute. For the first time, a victim had looked into the eyes of the monster and survived to tell the story. The hunter had been outmaneuvered by his own prey. Her escape sent a tremor through his carefully constructed reality, marking the beginning of the end for his unchecked reign. The testimony of the survivor cut through the silence of the investigation like a blade. Authorities tracked the vehicle, leading to a pivotal stop that stripped away his last layer of safety. He was taken into custody, and the investigation turned immediately to the interior of his car. Officers moved through the vehicle, pulling back the floor mats and searching the nooks of the frame. They found a collection of items that turned speculation into cold, undeniable proof. A length of rope, stiff with age. A ski mask, pulled from the glove compartment. An ice pick, its metal tip sharp and clean, tucked beneath the passenger seat. These were not the tools of a law student or a political volunteer. They were the mechanical apparatus of a predator. As the evidence was cataloged, the public reaction shifted from confusion to a deep, visceral shock. The man who had been trusted in offices and classrooms was suddenly exposed as a source of calculated violence. Every item pulled from the car acted as a mirror, reflecting a reality that the community had refused to see. The mask was not just slipping. It had been torn away entirely, leaving only the image of a monster caught in the light. The legal process in Aspen was meant to be his cage, but he treated the courtroom like a chessboard. He requested access to the second-floor library, a seemingly mundane move that exploited the thin margin of oversight. He was left alone with the stacks. He did not read. He listened to the spacing of the guards' footsteps in the hallway. When the rhythm synchronized, he moved. He crossed the room in 3 strides, threw his weight against the window frame, and kicked it outward. The glass shattered. He did not hesitate. He vaulted over the ledge, dropping 20 feet onto the frozen ground below. He landed, stumbled, and forced his lungs to take in the biting air. He did not look back. He ran toward the tree line, his boots crunching into the snow as the sirens began to wail behind him. The guards reached the window, but the library was empty. He disappeared into the dense, jagged terrain of the mountains. For 6 days, the state became a hunting ground. He was a predator loose in the wild, and the silence of the woods offered no clues to his path. The authorities scrambled, but he had already turned his confinement into a ghost story. The prison cell was supposed to be his final stop, but he viewed the concrete walls as a puzzle waiting to be solved. He spent nights mapping the ceiling, listening to the hollow echo of the crawl space above. He began to carve. He worked with a deliberate, rhythmic scrape that blended into the ambient noise of the block, slowly cutting a hole through the plaster and wood. It took weeks of silence and patience. When the opening was wide enough, he pulled himself up into the dark, cramped space between floors. He crawled through the dust and insulation, navigating the maze of pipes and beams until he reached the vent above the guard's apartment. He dropped down into the room, silent as a shadow. He moved through the space, gathered what he needed, and stepped into the hallway. He did not run. He walked toward the exit with the rhythm of someone who belonged there. He reached the front door, pushed it open, and stepped out into the night air. The prison remained locked, its guards unaware that their most dangerous occupant had simply walked away. He vanished into the dark, leaving behind a hollowed-out cell and a trail that had already gone cold. Florida became his new hunting ground. He arrived under a different name, settling into the quiet rhythm of Tallahassee as if he were just another face in the crowd. He did not rush. He spent his days observing the flow of the city, mapping the patterns of the streets and the habits of those who lived there. He found a rhythm in the mundane. He watched from the shadows of parking lots and the edges of campus walkways, measuring the distance between safety and vulnerability. The town was a sprawl of late-night activity and open doors, a landscape of easy access that he studied with the focus of a cartographer. He picked his spots. He walked the perimeter of sorority houses, noting the timing of the lights and the movement of the residents. Every action was a rehearsal. He kept his head down, avoided unnecessary attention, and let the town lull itself into a false sense of security. He was a ghost moving through the humidity, a silent variable in the lives of thousands. The air in Tallahassee grew heavy, not with weather, but with the weight of an unseen observer waiting for the right moment to strike. He was ready. On the 14th of January 1978, the sanctuary of the Chi Omega House shattered. He moved through the threshold, a silent intruder in a space defined by locked doors and sleeping residents. He did not hesitate. He struck with a blunt force that tore through the quiet of the night. Within the span of 15 minutes, the interior became a site of chaos. He moved from room to room, his actions precise and relentless. The sound of heavy impact echoed against the walls, followed by sudden, sharp cries that were silenced almost as quickly as they began. He left no corner untouched. 2 lives ended in the dark, their presence extinguished by his intrusion. Two others suffered injuries that would mark them forever. He navigated the hallways with a cold, singular purpose, shattering the safety of every door he pushed open. He was a force of total destruction, leaving behind a scene of absolute devastation. When he finally retreated into the night, the house remained in a suffocating, heavy silence, the air thick with the reality of what had transpired. He vanished back into the shadows of the campus, leaving behind a trail of ruin that would be discovered only when the morning light hit the rooms. The trail of violence reached its final point. After the kidnapping of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach, whose life was taken in the deep cover of a forest, the net began to tighten. On February 15, 1978, in Pensacola, a patrol officer flagged a vehicle. It was the stolen Volkswagen. The driver did not stop. He accelerated, tires screeching against the asphalt in a desperate bid to vanish once more. The patrol car gave chase. The pursuit ended in a residential block where the vehicle was forced to a halt. He bolted from the car, sprinting toward the neighboring yards. Officers pursued on foot. He reached a fence, vaulted it, and scrambled into the darkness of a garden. They cornered him near a wall. He did not surrender. He lashed out, arms swinging, feet kicking, fighting with the frantic intensity of a cornered animal. The officers tackled him to the ground. They pressed his face into the dirt, locking his wrists behind his back. The struggle was violent and brief. He stopped moving as the weight of the law pinned him to the earth. The reign of terror reached its absolute end. He was in custody, and this time, there would be no escape. The courtroom became a stage. He did not sit at the defendant table, he stood at the lectern, acting as his own counsel. He questioned witnesses with a practiced precision, turning every interrogation into a debate. Cameras lined the walls, recording every shift in his posture and every calculated word. He leaned toward the jury, lowered his voice, and spoke as if he were a man wronged by the system. The gallery watched, mesmerized by the performance. The proceedings devolved into a circus. He controlled the flow of the trial, deciding which questions to ask and which evidence to challenge. Then came the moment that silenced the room. He called Carol Ann Boone to the stand. She stepped up, placing her hand on the book to take the oath. He looked at her, then turned to the judge and spoke the words that bound them in law. He proposed marriage while she stood under oath. The judge granted the request, and they exchanged vows before the jury. The courtroom erupted in confusion. He smiled, a thin, sharp expression, while the cameras flashed. He had turned the pursuit of justice into a theater of his own design. The spotlight faded, replaced by the sterile fluorescent hum of death row. 10 years stretched out in a small, concrete cell. He no longer had the jury to charm or the cameras to command. He had only time, and he used it as his final weapon. He began to speak to investigators, offering fragments of truth in exchange for delays. He sat across from detectives, leaning forward and slowly cataloged his life of violence. He admitted to 30 murders, his voice calm, detailing acts that defied human logic. Each confession was a transaction. He gave them a location, a date, or a name, and in return, he bought a few more days of breath. The families waited, clinging to every word, desperate for closure that never fully arrived. He held back the truth about the missing, leaving the final count in shadow. He played with their grief, doling out details with calculated precision to prolong his stay. He knew that for every name he provided, there were others buried in the dark, their stories silenced forever by his hand. The true scale of his destruction remained a locked door, and he held the only key. He sat in the silence of his cell, a man who had traded his legacy for a few more rotations of the earth. On the 24th of January, 1989, the clock finally stopped. The walk to the chamber was short. He sat down, the restraints clicked shut, and the state of Florida moved to end the life of a predator. Outside the prison gates, the silence of the morning was shattered by a roar. Crowds had gathered under the gray sky, waiting for the signal. When the news reached them, they cheered. They lifted signs, shouted, and surged against the barricades, celebrating the end of a long, dark chapter. He offered no final words of remorse, no apology to the families, and no acknowledgement of the lives he extinguished. He left only the cold hard fact of his deeds. As the lights dimmed and the world moved on, A final, chilling reality remained. The most dangerous monsters do not live in shadows or nightmares. They are the ones who stand in parking lots, hold doors open, and smile with a kindness that feels entirely familiar. They are the ones who look exactly like us, walking among us until the moment they strike.